What's up, moviegoers? Welcome to the Marchio podcast. I'm your host, Anthony. In today's episode, I'll be talking about HELLRAISER III, Hell on Earth. Now, the third HELLRAISER movie, let me just say, is one of my favorites in the franchise. The reason it's a favorite of mine is because it comes during the 90s, right after the big 80s, horror movie time, and HELLRAISER III, Hell on Earth came out in 1992, and like the previous first two movies, it's 93 minutes long. The characters are based off of the Hellbound Heart from Clive Barker. Now, Doug Bradley does return as Pinhead. This is the most interesting thing about it, is that we find out that the former humanity of the HELLRAISER II causes Pinhead, a demon called Cenobite, to be split into two entities, Elliot Spencer, and the manifestation of his ID, which takes place on the form of Pinhead. Now, while Spencer ends up in limbo, Pinhead is trapped along with the puzzle box among withering figures and distorted faces that are etched into the surface of a carved pillar called the Pillar of Souls. Now, you might remember me talking about the Pillar of Souls in the previous episode of the Marchio podcast, because that was the ending of Hellbound HELLRAISER II. And basically, like I said, he's trapped in the Pillar of Souls, and he resurrects himself by absorbing the life force of unlucky humans. And after converting several, young, youths, into new Cenobites, he goes on a rampage and starts, doing all this crazy shit on Earth. And there is a reporter played by Terry Farrell, and she doesn't believe anything that's happening and can't understand why it's happening. So during the course of this movie, as things are going on, we get new Cenobites. We get the so-called Piston Head Cenobite, Camera Head Cenobite, the Barbie Cenobite, and of course we get Pinhead, the almighty of almighty Cenobites. Ashley Lawrence, who played Kirsty in the first two movies, does return in a cameo role, and she explains that the puzzle box is the only means of returning Pinhead to hell. And of course, a horror movie always returns the main character of a first movie just to, explain things and how it's done, because they've been through that. And it was interesting because this movie has one of the most interesting scenes of all horror movies, and it takes place in a nightclub. Basically what happens is that Pinhead shuts all the doors in this nightclub, and somehow he happens to start this machine, and it starts killing everybody in this nightclub. And it's just a weird way of killing people and doing things, but it's so different and unique because you've never seen that done in any horror movie before or after this, and you've still never seen something so unique done in a way. The creepy factor about this movie is the Pillar of Souls. There's a scene where two characters are, having sex and getting it on, and you see the Pillar of Souls in the background, just spinning and lurking and, spying on them. And there's a scene where one of the main male characters is sleeping, and the Pillar of Souls is right in front of him and at the edge of his bed, and Pinhead is just, talking to him through it, and it's just weird. And the interesting thing is that, Doug Bradley is in that Pillar of Soul himself as the actor playing Pinhead, because, his face and his features are just moving, and it's nothing of CGI or anything like that. So this movie, you could say, is like a final, trilogy of the first three Hellraiser movies, because once this movie ends, it's like, okay, where do you go from here? And like I stated in the episode where I talked about Hellraiser, the first movie, they made 9 films. Let me tell you that this is where they should have stopped, because HELLRAISER III, Hell on Earth is different, like I said, and it's very done well, because Pinhead comes out of his world and comes into ours. And when you have a horror icon that is big and outrageous like Pinhead, and you bring him into our world, anything can happen and anything's possible. And that's what they did. They did that, and they didn't hold back. There is a scene where the actress Terry Farrell, who plays Joanne, goes into a church, and she goes up to a priest, and she says, "Listen, there's some man chasing me, there's a demon chasing me." And the priest goes, "My dear, there's no such thing as demons." And then all of a sudden, Pinhead bursts through the front door by not even touching it, just blows it out of its, screws and handles. And she says, "Then what the fuck is that?" That is one of the best lines I've heard in any horror movie. And it's done so well, and it's executed so well. And all of a sudden, once the priest sees that, you see Pinhead walk through this church and past the pews, and everything's becoming fire and blowing up. He gets to the altar where the blood is and the bread, and he starts, chanting and doing certain things. And he, does the sign of the cross, where he sticks his hand out and fire illuminates from the candles behind him. It's one of the most beautiful shots in the whole entire movie. And it's done so well. Now, the only thing I didn't like about this movie, of course, there's a lot of things that you like and you don't like about a horror movie. And the thing that I didn't like about this movie was the ending. Where it was and how it was done, how Pinhead went back inside the box. And it's not fun, The whole movie was good up until that very last shot. And you see that the puzzle box is buried where, Joey or Joanne, the main character, puts it in a pool of concrete at a construction site. And then she, it's revealed later that the site of the building is identical to the puzzle box design. So it's very interesting how they did that. And if they did that and they moved on forward with that, it would have been great. But like I said, this kind of ended the trilogy of the first movie, the second movie, and this one. Because once after this movie ended, things shifted in the entire franchise of Hellraiser. And I'll definitely be talking about that. Now, the tagline for this movie is "What started in hell will end on earth" is great. And you see Pinhead in the poster holding the Lamont configuration puzzle box as he's looking towards you and smiling and a little bit irking. And then behind him is the city skyline. So it's interesting, like I said, because if you bring in a horror icon into our world, anything can happen. And as I said in the Hellraiser episode, what happens if you actually had a Lamont configuration, and all of a sudden you solved it? That's one thing you don't want to do. You don't want to summon a being from another dimension who some think is an angel, who some think is a demon, and then go on from there. You don't want to live that eternity of, being a Cenobite at all. Doesn't look like it's fun, but maybe to sadomasochistic people or BDSM people, they might like that. I'm probably going to get a lot of shit for that or negative comments saying that, oh, I'm against that, whatever. It's a factoid, I'm not against anything. It's just how you look at things and how things are portrayed in movies based on reality. Now, the interesting thing about the movie is that we see the human side of Pinhead. The character of Spencer, the World War I British Army captain, comes to Joey and explains everything. Basically, Spencer contacts Joey, and he explains that his experiences in World War I caused him to lose faith in humanity. And he sought out the forbidden pleasures promised by a puzzle box, and this puzzle box being the Lamont configuration. Now, Spencer tells her that without his humanity to act as a balancing influence, Pinhead is the opposite and is completely evil and will indiscriminately wreak havoc on Earth for his own pleasure, in violation of the Cenobite laws and the laws gifted to him by Leviathan. Now, in order to defeat Pinhead, Joey, the main character, must reunite the Spencer spirit with Pinhead and use the puzzle box to return him to hell. Now, this whole concept and story was great because when the beginning of the movie happened and you saw the two splits of, the entities, it's just creepy, it's just weird, and then later on you see it come back, it's just, hold on, what's happening, and seeing the human side of Pinhead, played by Doug Bradley, explaining to the main character of Joey or Joanne how to kill this, the embodiment of evil was very interesting. I find that to be the most interesting factor of this movie. It's very done well. And the way the dialogue is spoken between Doug Bradley and Terry Farrell in this scene is really unique and fantastic. And you get to the sense of like, okay, maybe Pinhead can be defeated. Maybe he is, not human, and he has so-called soul that you can defeat and once and forever, send him back to hell or wherever he came from, or from this other dimension that he speaks of that he's from. Now, with that, the third movie kind of did better at the box office than the first two previous movies because it gained a cult following, and it grossed close to $12.5 million at the box office. Now, back in 1992 times, that was a big hit for a horror movie. And like I said, Hellraiser, Hellbound Hellraiser 2, and Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth are the closing trilogy that I think where things stopped and where the Pinhead story, was finished and accomplished. Because once the next movies happen, things are different. It's not your normal Hollywood feeling of a movie. It's more so B-movie. It's more so of a quick horror. Let's put this out on video on demand, or let's just put this out on DVD or a streaming service. And that's what's basically they did. So you could say that Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth is the last good Hellraiser movie in the franchise. So let me know in the comment section below what you think about Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth. Did you like it? Why did you like it? And if you didn't like it, and what do you take away from it? Did you like seeing the human side of Pinhead? Did you like the nightclub scene? And was the Pillar of Souls creepy to you? And what do you think could have been done differently and changed at the ending of this movie? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm very curious to hear what you guys think. And be sure you click that subscribe button and hit that notification bell for new videos and new podcast episodes on the Marchio Productions YouTube page. And follow Marchio Productions on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And follow me, Anthony, your host, on Instagram and Twitter at misterfilmstock. And follow the Marchio Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. I'll leave a link to all the social media accounts in the description box below. You can check it out and follow along. All right, everyone, that does it for today's episode. I'm your host, Anthony. Thanks for tuning in.
Oh, it's unbearable, isn't it? The suffering of strangers, the agony of friends.